Welcome to Lifemap with Dr. Matt Jensen, a podcast dedicated to empowering teens and young adults. Join us on a journey of self-discovery as we tackle overcoming obstacles and challenges while igniting your true potential and rising to the best version of yourself. Here's your host, Dr. Matt Jensen.
Hey everybody, it's once again Dr. Matt Jensen. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to have you along this journey of life as we continue to build and read our life map together. And I hope that you teenagers, you young adults, you college students that have been tuning in, and by the way, I just want to say thank you. Our channel is growing and we're getting more and more subscribers and downloads and people listening on the podcast audio platforms, as well as here on YouTube and our social media. I'm just excited that you are starting to share your thoughts. You're sharing our episodes, our channels with others, because listen, this is why I'm here, right? I'm here because I want to be a source of empowerment, of inspiration. I want to help you ignite what Tony Robbins calls the giant within. Each one of you have a superpower, have this innate ability to become so great and to affect this world in positive ways that you don't even know about. And so that brings me to being totally excited about our topic today. By the way, I hope you enjoyed our last episode, Dawn Man, Human Wrecking Ball. If you haven't, I invite you to go back and listen to the previous two episodes. He's a decorated Navy SEAL. He was at one time the number 38th ranked triathlete in the world. And his stories about overcoming obstacles and training was phenomenal. And it's a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today. So I hope if you're just listening at home, I hope if you are watching the video that you'll sit back and enjoy, because we have just some great stuff that we are going to cover today. Here, let me introduce it by saying, one of the biggest reasons that teens, young adults, that all of us sometimes struggle with rising up to our potential and truly being capable, or truly understanding what we're capable of, is that we don't place trust where we should feel the safest. And that's putting the trust with ourselves. So we've talked in the past about self-perception, the way we see ourselves. We've talked about self-esteem, the way that we feel about ourselves. And today we're going to talk about trusting in yourself. This is crucial because even if you struggle with your self-esteem, like so many of us do at times, even if you don't right now have the highest self-perception, learning to trust yourself is simply just as easy as putting one foot in front of the other. You just have to trust that you can do it. Now, how do we do that? First, let me open with a story. The story is about we're going to go back about 10 years, okay? My oldest daughter at that time was around 12 or 13 years, and some of my brothers, some of her uncles, began to get into the world, just like Dawn Man did from our previous episodes, in triathlons. If you're not familiar with triathlons, there's many different versions, different lengths, and different endurance levels, but they all involve three different sports: swimming, biking, and running, and usually in that order. Well, my oldest daughter, was a little athlete. She was a soccer player. She ran cross country, and she just had a lot of energy. And when she saw her uncles starting to do these triathlons at 12 years old, she looked at me and said, "Dad, let's do that." Well, 10 years ago, I wasn't in the best physical shape, right? I didn't have great physical acumen. I didn't have a lot of abilities. And good grief, it was hard for me just to get up and run around the block, let alone start training for something I'd never done before. And here's what happened. I didn't want to be that dad, for those of you teenagers and young adults. I didn't want to be that dad that said, "Oh, that's a great thing, but I can't do it, but I'll help you." But I told her this, and I kind of underestimated her, which was my first mistake. I said, "I'll tell you what, if you go show me that you can swim," and by the way, we were going to go for the sprint, kind of the entry level, which is a half-mile swim. You bike, I think it's like 10 or 12 miles, and then you run 5K, like a little over 3 miles. So I told her, I said, if you can swim, and we lived by a lake and had a community center swimming pool. I said, if you'll swim just quarter of a mile, then I will start training. Well, she had never really competed or done a lot of swimming other than just playing at the community pool. So she said, okay, Dad, I'm going to do it. And I swear it was only a few days later when I got home from work and she was waiting at the front door with her arms crossed and a big smile on her face. And she said, and my wife is in the background with a smirk and a smile, right? And she said, Dad, I did it. I swam a quarter mile today. And I looked at her and then I looked at my wife, and my wife was in the background smiling because she knew what I had promised my daughter, that if she swam a half a mile or a quarter mile, I would start training. Well, here's the thing, right? It's not that I didn't want to do it. It's just that I didn't trust myself that I can do something like this. I was never really an athlete, although I loved sports. I never competed on a high school team. I did a few rec leagues and whatnot, but as a father, I wanted to honor my word. And so the next day or a few days later, I went to the community pool and I started swimming laps, and I was so tired and gasping, and it's a wonder I didn't drown. But it took me a few days, but after a while, I was surprised that I swam a quarter mile. Now, that's only half of what you're supposed to swim with this sprint level triathlon. But here's what I'm saying. This looked like a very difficult feat for me in my position. I hadn't trained, I hadn't done it before, and I didn't trust myself that I could put in the endurance, the training, and the effort that's needed to be able to actually enter, compete, and finish a triathlon. I just didn't think I had it in me. I didn't trust what I didn't realize I was capable of. But let's fast forward a little bit. And I'm gonna give my producer a picture here in a minute to show of the day when I entered that first triathlon with my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter. And it was hard, but through the training, through one step at a time, my trust and my confidence in myself grew to where I felt confident enough to enter my first triathlon race. And I did it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I wish this story was that I came in top 3 or top 5. I don't know where I placed, but I finished and I did it. And how excited was I? Can you imagine this? When I was at the finish line, because my heat went before my daughter, so I didn't even know how she was doing. But the feeling of exhilaration that came to me when I saw her running through that last little bit to the finish line, and we celebrated together that we had put in the work and that we had trusted our abilities to do something. And the reward of doing this led us to entering several more triathlons. And now I'm here to tell you, it's been several more years since I've done it, and I have family that's challenged me once again to enter another triathlon, a little bit longer, the next level up. It's longer in all aspects. But this time I have a son that is a teenager that's never done this, and he and I have made the decision to train together. Now, why do I open with this story? I've told you we're going to talk about trusting ourselves, right? I want to direct your attention to an amazing quote that has stuck with me forever. I don't know how many of you, especially you high school students, college students, know the name of Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky was probably one of, if not the all-time great or best at professional hockey. He had a decorated career. I believe he ended with the Rangers. I can't remember, but his feats and records and career is something truly remarkable. And this is what he said. Now imagine having a hockey stick, and of course the way that hockey's played, they run down the rink, they pass it to each other, and eventually the goal is to take a shot. They grasp that hockey stick on the ends and they lean in and they put all their power into a shot on the puck that is meant to propel it all the way into the net. Well, this is what Wayne Gretzky said. He said, "You miss 100% of the shots that you never take. I love that. Now, I want each one of you to think about what that means. It means that we are doomed to failure. Our trust in ourselves will never take hold if we never put forth the effort. So I want each one of you to kind of think through your lives and ask yourselves, what is it that's holding me back? What do I want to accomplish? As we talk about the journey of life, right? That's what this channel is all about, that we're on a journey and we can not only reach our destinations, but we can do it with having happiness, success, and satisfaction along the way, right? So ask yourselves, what is it that I want to accomplish the most right now? And what is it that's holding me back? And ask yourselves, why? What is holding me back? Probably many of us can relate those excuses or those reasons back to trusting ourselves, having confidence in ourselves to take the first step forward, to take the next step. I love my visitor, and I learned so much from working with him, but Don says, listen, we can't get overwhelmed with the goal itself. We need to focus on the baby steps that get us to point A, to point B, to point Z. So if you decide, hey, I want to get straight A's this year, but I don't think I can do it. I've tried, it's not working. Or you want to make the basketball team, or if you want to kick a bad habit or overcome an addiction, whatever it is that you know deep down that you want to accomplish, overcome, or do, ask yourself, why am I being held back? What are my excuses? Does it have to do with trusting yourself? And a lot of times it does. We don't trust ourselves or have confidence in ourselves that we're going to succeed. So therefore, we may be afraid of, you guessed it, of failure. But what does Wayne say, Mr. Gretzky? Yes, you will fail if you don't at least take a step forward. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But let's turn that statement around for a little bit. How many shots would we make if we took 5, 10, 100 steps forward? If we made the effort, are we going to miss every single one of them? We aren't. I'll bet you, and I should have looked at this before the episode, I would love to know what percentage of shots he took that actually ended up with a goal. Maybe it was 1 in 5, 1 in 10. But the point is, he trusted himself to take the shots enough that it eventually brought him success. Now, so I want you to think of that throughout the remainder of this episode, because what my goal is, my friends, by the end of this episode, I want you to commit to something. I want you to commit to be willing to start with your mind, your thought process, and commit to change the words I can't to I can, but we're not done yet, to I will, right? That is the art in the beauty of mindset, and that can start to build trust and confidence in ourselves. And my friends, I cannot tell you of the fire in my belly that I feel when I think of the power of just making that mindset change. Before we even take the step forward, before we even say to ourselves, I can trust myself. But when you say, you know what, I'm going to stop saying I can't. We don't even need to say, I'll try. Try is better than can't. But I want you to say, I can. Because the word I can, that connotes the possibility. It opens the door, right? It opens the door to your willingness to take the first baby step. And then when we go from I can, and it might take time before we go from I can to I will, right? That's another step down the road as we continue to do whatever it takes to build ourselves and to build our confidence and our trust in ourselves. Listen to this story. Here's another story. Cameron Rogers, and again, I have links to all these stories in the show notes, but Cameron Rogers was a track and field athlete in Canada. She had done different track and field events through high school, and her coach or somebody, you need to read the story. I do want to just say that if I get a few details wrong, I'm sorry, but the gist of the story, the lesson of the story is what's important. But her coach approached her to start working on the hammer throw. Now, for those of you who don't know what the hammer throw is, I just thought it was some heavy sledgehammer that you threw like an axe and you saw how further it went, but it's not. In fact, we'll put a picture up of it, of the hammer throw. The hammer throw is a still weighted ball that's attached to like a big wire, and it's wound up somehow and you throw it. It's a heavy object, little awkward, and they measure the distance. In fact, I thought that was fascinating. In fact, the hammer throw goes back to like 2000 BC. It goes back like 4,500 years. Man, that's a long time, right? And it was this event where this Celtic warrior, his name was Cuchulainn. I'll try to put the spelling in the notes. But anyway, he picked up a chariot axle and the wheel and he threw it in the I've got Celtian games in Ireland. Anyway, so the point is it's got this kind of this cool medieval history to it, and it's evolved to the current sport that it is. At any rate, back to the story of Cameron. So Cameron decided, hey, why not? I'm gonna take a shot. I'm gonna take a chance and see how I do with this new sport. And so she did, and she got pretty good, and she was able to advance to the championships. It's called the U20 World Championships in Poland. And then the story takes kind of a sad turn. Cameron goes to this episode and she places last, right? She places last. And she talks in this article about her frustration, and she totally lost trust in herself. Not desire. She had a desire. She wanted to do it. She had been doing it. But then it turned into trust. She didn't trust in herself that she could take steps to improve and get better. So I'll pause the story there because I think even if we're on this road that we keep talking about, our journey of life, and we break down from time to time, right? We get a flat tire. We have some type of mechanical problem, metaphorically speaking, on our journey through life. Do we just stop the journey and do we say, well, I don't trust that this car is going to get me to the journey I want? Imagine if you're on a road trip to Disneyland, Disney World, or to the beach, or to some other place, and you got a flat tire. Are you going to give up on your vacation? No, of course not. We're going to call AAA, or we're going to call the roadside assistance. Even if it delays us for a day, we're not going to give up, right? Well, life, just like my book, continues to remind us all. Life is the same way. So how do you think Cameron Rogers responded to this? Well, she had her period of frustration and doubt. She says this whole article, the story that she writes that you'll see the link to, is all about self-trust and trusting in ourselves. Well, she started communicating with this coach from the U.S. at the University of California at Berkeley, who was a coach with track and field in this specific event. And this coach started giving her some thoughts about how to rebuild her trust in herself so that she could rebuild the confidence to get back on the field and start competing again. In fact, she ended up working again. She ended up working with this coach, and she ended up competing again. And it brought her to the next, I don't know if it was the next, but she then went on to the 2019 U20, the same World Games, where she, the next time, won the gold. Now, there's a whole story of the work involved and the confidence building and all of the baby steps that she needed to take. And she talks about it in her story, but it leads to her having confidence to compete again. And what happens? Not only did she win gold at the U20 games in Finland, but she went on in the US at Berkeley to become the NCAA champion in the hammer throw. Look at that turnaround. From placing last from the games in Poland to winning the gold and additional honors in the collegiate sports arena. But I love that she doesn't talk about that she didn't have the desire, that she didn't have the physical capability. It came to her confidence in herself. So we ask ourselves, what is it that keeps us from trying again? Or, as I keep saying over and over again, rekindling and building the trust in ourselves to try and to move forward. What is it? Each one of us have moments and times in our lives where we lose confidence in ourselves. And I'm no different than each of you. And in an episode coming up, and I will make sure that I'm announcing it on social media, because I'm going to share with you a major crossroads in my life where fear and anxiety, in addition to self-doubt, had me paralyzed. And I had literally zero confidence in my ability to pick up the pieces and move forward. Okay? That's a story that I'm going to open myself up to, and I hope that you'll join us in the future. And it'll come, and I will announce it and make hints on social media channels. But it was a moment of decision in my life, just like it was for Cameron, where I had to decide, am I going to start building trust in myself again so that I could start taking step after step that would lead me to feeling successful and happy again. Spoiler alert, I did. I eventually overcame it, and the confidence returned and the self-trust in myself grew. But I want you to hear that story a little bit later on. Now, is deciding to have trust in ourselves all of a sudden going to make things rosy and good again? The answer is no, and it's important that we understand that. Building our trust in ourselves is a little different than building our self-esteem, right? Our self-esteem has to do with what influences we let into our life. And our self-perception, as we've talked about in the past, is having a positive self-perception where we can look back and say, hey, I'm letting good things in my life. I'm building up my self-esteem, and I think I'm happier with who I am. But trust in ourselves is something even more basic, where we can learn to trust ourselves to take just the next step in our journey of accomplishing whatever it is we want to accomplish. So, do you trust yourself to take the first step to getting a 4.0 or getting even a 3.0 if you have worse grades than that? And another spoiler alert, I did not have great grades in high school. That's another episode. But do you have trust in yourself that you can put in the work to make the high school basketball team, or to become an artist with your artwork and your creations to share with others and get the praise that you're looking for? Again, we don't worry about what other people say, but whatever it is we're looking for to feel like we've accomplished something, it starts with trusting ourselves to make the first step, the second step, an ongoing step, by changing the words I can't to I can, and eventually to, say it, I will. There are some authors out there that are self-help people, and they talk about marriage and family. Their names are Linda and Charlie Bloom, and I hope to have them on the show, one of them on the show one time. But they said something in one of their recent articles, again, in the show notes. Listen to what they said. They said, self-trust is not trusting yourself to know all the answers, nor is it believing that you will always do the right things. It's having the conviction that you will be kind and respectful to yourself, regardless of the outcome of your efforts, right? So you trust yourself that you're going to do the right thing for you. And as we've talked about earlier in the episode, that we need to develop trust so that we can take the next steps and do hard things. That's one branch. That's one pathway of self-trust. But trusting that we are a good person, trusting that you're good at heart. Do you want to hear something amazing? I hope you all know the story of Anne Frank. Almost everybody in U.S. history or world history or whatever it is know the story of the Diary of Anne Frank. And she witnessed firsthand the cruelty. She witnessed firsthand the devastation of conflict and war and of one group of people despising another group of people, right? It's terrible. And I love that even with the evil that was around her, she wrote in her journal this: I believe, in spite of everything, that most people, and it might be all people, I should have checked that quote, but I'll put it in the show notes, the exact quote. But she said, despite everything, I still believe that people are good at heart. Now, can you believe the trust she had in her own outlook in life to be able to say that, even amongst the terrible things that were going on around her? Can we say the same things? Can we look at people who might treat us badly and trust ourselves enough to say, you know what? I'm going to give that person a pass because they're having a bad day. Now, I'm not saying that we ever make exception or that we ever are okay with abuse, bullying, or mistreatment of others. That's not what I'm saying, but I hope you understand that we're around everybody that might give us a smirk or a rude comment from time to time. And my biggest challenge with that is on the road. My wife tells me I get so impatient on the road. Do I trust myself? Am I confident enough of myself to say next time I get cut off on the road, oh well, you know what? Doesn't bother me. That person just must be having a bad day. I'm going to give them a pass today. Do I trust myself and have enough confidence in myself to be able to make plays like that and comments like that every day? My hope is that I do. And my hope for each one of us is that we recognize what trust can do for us. Now, we haven't really touched on trusting others. That's almost a whole different subject that we can talk about. When it's okay to trust others, what signs of trust are, and the fruits of trust in others. Trust is earned, right? People need to recognize that although we try to approach and have an open heart, our interactions with others, that trust is to be built and earned. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about trusting yourself. And my hope for each one of you is that you'll find within yourselves the ability to know what you are capable of and to begin to understand that the first step to healing and building your self-esteem, to building your self-perception, to overcoming obstacles, we can apply this self-trust to so many areas, but that you recognize that I just need to trust myself first. And how do we trust ourselves? You know, we listen to our gut, right? We that gut feeling that we have, all of us have that innate sense of right and wrong, and it can get cloudy when we're challenged and we find ourselves in environments we should have, but deep down, each one of us have that conscience that tells us if this is a good step or the right path for you. So I hope that each one of us can challenge or really channel our focus to our inner selves and learn to recognize that gut feeling that we each have that tells us whether it's wrong or right. Sometimes I've heard people call it a moral compass, right? Or that little voice in our head. Now be careful when I say little voice in our head. I'm not trying to confuse it with voices that can come when we're doing the wrong thing, right? The little angel on one shoulder that tells us the right thing and the devil that's trying to get us tempted to do the wrong things. We're talking about the angel on this shoulder. And that as we learn to listen to that gut feeling, that conscience that we're all born with, that says it's okay to take the next step. And when we take that next step and we realize it was a good step and it felt good, that is the first step that we can begin to build trust in ourselves. And listen, if you're a teenager, a college student, if you're a parent or family member, an adult, because you like the content, even though I'm here to talk to teenagers and young adults, every single one of us have certain aspects of our life that we're unsure of, that we feel inept or unable or we have doubt with. But as you see in so much of my advertising material, I want us to crush self-doubt. I want us to crush the anxiety, not clinical anxiety. I'm talking about the everyday anxiety that we get nervous about. To crush those things so that we can take the step forward that will lead us to having an ounce more of self-confidence, and then trust ourselves to take the next step so that our confidence in ourselves grows. And my friends, when you take a few steps and you look back and you realize, I did it. I took the first few steps to having better study habits. I took the first few steps of practicing a little harder. I took the first few steps at learning how to forgive somebody. I took the first few steps forward to begin to treat myself better, or to do A or B or C, whatever it is that I asked you to think about at the beginning of this episode, that you begin to see that when you take a first few steps toward the goal and the end point, that not only do you want, but that self-conscience is telling you to do all along, as you take those baby steps, you don't have to accomplish the entire journey right now, but your trust in yourself is going to grow, and it's going to feel good, and it's going to be reassuring. And I hope that we can each grab a hold of that feeling that we feel when we are taking those baby steps forward. And then we recognize if we stay the course, we can get to the first mile marker, and then to the second mile marker. And then before you know it, you are well on your journey. You trust yourself, your confidence has grown, and you are well on your way to accomplishing your goals. And again, self-trust doesn't necessarily, it's not defined, right, by accomplishing the goal, but it's focused on the personal growth and development we experience as we trust ourselves and as we put one foot in front of the other. That is where true peace and happiness come along. That's where the success begins to fill our hearts, and where we begin to feel like we are worth much more than we ever might have thought we were. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. You guys are on the right path. I am so excited, and I'm just so thankful that you're tuning in and you're listening to these bits of content that can help each one of us. It can propel us to the next area, to the next mile marker in our journey of life. And I'm just thrilled and excited to be on the journey with you. Do yourselves a favor today. Tell somebody that you enjoyed the episode and send them the link to, I don't care if it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, send them the link and say, hey, I like this episode and I think you might like it too. Because listen, Dr. Matt, I'm right along the journey with you. I just happen to be the talking head on your screen, but I'm right there with you. So do me a favor, share this episode with a friend, relative, or somebody that you think could use it. Or share a link in one of your social media channels. But let's grow this audience together. Let's build a community around Lifemap so that we can all be a force for good in each other's life, in each other's online world and community, because I know that when we surround ourselves with positive influences, you're going to do nothing but propel yourself forward. All right? Check it out. Remember, just a reminder, if you send me a question, a comment, a story, or anything that you liked about this episode, I'm going to send you some gear, some t-shirts, or a hat. I'm going to have on my website a page of all the gear that you can choose from. In fact, that's a good reminder. I need to get my webmaster to get that stuff up. But you can choose hats, gear, hoodies, shirts, whatever it is. I'm going to send it to you. So, hey, nobody has sent me anything yet on the first episodes. I don't think anybody believes me. Of course, we're a new channel. We're growing. But why not be the first one to get a t-shirt or a hat? In fact, I was going to show you a hat. I'll show it to you next time. But most of the stuff is all about the sayings that I use all the time. I can, I will. And it's just great mojo for your life when you sport the gear to other people. Hit me up on social media. Make sure you tune in next week. We've got a great topic coming out next week. I'm excited to share it with you. Watch the social media channels for the topics. But until next time, keep moving forward and let's do this together. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.